This is Mario Andretti, and you are listening to Below the Yellow Line.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Below the Yellow Line. We are previewing the Craftsman Truck Series race at Las Vegas tonight on this show, so it feels fitting to have a Truck Series crew chief with us on the horn today. Jason Trinchere, crew chief for Chase Purdy in the number 77 truck at Spire Motorsports. Thank you for joining the program today. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely great to have you on the show. Let's jump right into it here. This past weekend at Atlanta, chaotic for all of us just watching on television. Two super speedways to start the season, and for what I believe is the first time ever. What is that like for a crew chief when you're kind of helpless sitting atop the pit box? You've done all the preparation you can. It's in Chase's hands and the hands of everybody else when you're at a super speedway. What are super speedway races like, especially at a sketchy track like Atlanta on the pit box?
Yeah, there's a lot that's definitely out of your hands. Even just trying to call the strategy, if you get a yellow before a stage break and you want to short pit it, but if you're just outside the top 10, you still got a good shot at getting points. So you have to play it a little conservative, especially for us. We're racing for every point we can get. But yeah, there's a lot out of your hands. Daytona we had some damage early in the first 6 laps on that first big wreck. But we were able to get back up to the front and just didn't get the finish. We ended up 29th after being involved in a wreck there too. But yeah, Atlanta, kind of the same thing. Not really the wrecking like you have at Daytona, but just the way the draft was. You had guys going to the front and back the whole race, so it kind of spread out to the top, and our truck wasn't handling the best, so it was kind of hard for us to hold on up there. But yeah, it's gonna be nice to get to Vegas to get to a real track for once and actually get to work on our regular racing for now.
Exactly. Luck's not going to have near as big of a hand in it. Everybody's going to say it is because it's Las Vegas, and they got to have something for the TV people to say that, they've said 20 million times already about rolling the dice and all that, but a little less luck-based on Friday night. What is it like working with Chase Purdy? He's a guy, I feel like I don't see just a ton of him. He kind of keeps his head down, but what is you guys' relationship like working together this season for the first time?
It's been really good. We tried to before I even moved over to Spire, we tried to get together a couple times and just try to work on communication and go into the simulator and things like that. Just the whole crew chief relationship when you're starting from scratch, you got to learn what the guy needs. And for me, that's still part of the work in progress for me. I also still trying to learn the little ins and outs of the trucks themselves too. So I still think going to Vegas will be good. We know we have a good base going there. We're going to have Kyle in our team truck, so we have a good notebook also to lean off of from him. So.
Yeah, kind of following up on that point, Kyle Busch won this past weekend at Atlanta. He's the favorite. He's probably going to be my pick tonight in the pre-race show for this race to win this race, just because he's Kyle Busch, and he's essentially driving his old trucks with Spire buying Kyle Busch Motorsports. But how handy is it to have not just a very talented driver, but a veteran driver, a driver who's been around in this sport, in the truck series for a while? How valuable is that to have his mind, his notebook, and to be able to pick his brain whenever you want to in the garage area on any given weekend?
It's you can almost say it's priceless. Last year he came up to Calling when I was up there and drove the 10 car a couple times and just bouncing questions off of him of what his experiences are helped that program too. I feel like there's a lot anybody can learn from him. If you put Kyle Busch in a car and you don't listen to him, you're not you're kind of a fool. So but yeah, I mean, just being able to bounce ideas off of what he's feeling, and just even we had similar issues with Chase as Kyle was having when they tried doing their qualifying run. A single truck, everybody you could see they were all over the place at Atlanta too, even just making single car runs. So.
Well, yeah, I'd imagine it would be invaluable to have a guy like Kyle Busch to lean on. And you talk about yourself being a colleague. Switching over to you now, you've been a lot of different places. You've made a lot of different stops. You've been pretty successful working for the likes of DEI, working for Team Penske, winning championships there, winning a lot of races. Is there anything that it's taught you being in the garage area for so long that you're able to use on the pit box now? Because you have all the experience. You've had so much success with Team Penske, especially winning the 2018 championship with Joey Logano, winning a slew of races. Is there any of that experience that carries over? Is the modern day truck series just kind of harder to adapt to when you're on the pit box for it for the first time?
I would say the experiences have helped just because of, I mean, even though back then I was a design engineer, still learning the parts and pieces, the trucks are still the older generation, just like the cup cars were back then too. Um, the trucks are a little more old school because they are the metal body still. I actually feel like now that I've gotten 2 truck races under my belt that it's more competitive than even Xfinity. Um, Everybody has the same engine, so it narrowed the field up a lot more. And then you have bigger teams themselves too, where you have like Tricon and all those guys have 5 teams, So between even us, with our 3 trucks and the Rev truck itself too, having 4 at the track, it's pretty tight. I mean, you have a good 20 teams that can go out and win, where you don't have like an Xfinity, you'll have teams that have an A motor program or a B motor program, and they all have the same body, so it kind of separates itself. You kind of see that at Atlanta too. You had that pack that separated, and that was pretty quick in the race that it happened too. So yeah, just trying to use past experience, and not even just my experience itself being a crew chief, but your relationships themselves. So when I was at DEI, I got to work with Bono, and I'm getting to work with him again. Um, we went through the merger and went to Earnhardt Ganassi, and I actually was a support engineer for Bono and Brian Patty. So for both those guys to be the other 2 crew chiefs for me to lean on, that's invaluable. I feel honored that they asked me to do this.
Kind of a full circle moment for you there. And you talk about the truck series being different. The one thing that we always say as fans and media people when we're watching those truck series races is, wow, those guys are aggressive. The guys in the truck series, maybe it's just because they're younger, they're hungrier, they feel like they have more to prove. The truck series is so competitive and it is so aggressive. Was that a big jump going from what I would say is a relatively tame series in the Xfinity series and of course the Cup series? Those guys are the best in the world. Going down to the Truck series where you have some of these younger drivers, did that make you have to plan strategy or how you set up a truck differently with these guys racing so hard and racing so aggressively?
Yeah, I think they're so aggressive too, just because the stages are shorter and the race itself is shorter. So you don't have a lot of time you have to go like now, especially on a restart. Um, just yeah, the setups alone in the trucks and even the way you call it, it's similar to Xfinity because you have about the same amount of tires in a race that you did in Xfinity. You have you're going to take a set at each stage, and you got 1 set left for the end of the race. So um, the strategy kind of plays itself out that way, not like in Cup where you have enough tires, you can do whatever you need to. So you have to be pretty efficient with your changes because you don't get too many pit stops.
I imagine that would be tough. And I always say whenever I interview a crew chief, and especially if I have to ask them about a tough call they made recently, I always follow that up with, I'm glad I'm not you. I'm glad you were doing that job and not myself, because the stress of being a crew chief would just be too much for myself to bear. You said earlier, this weekend you're going to Vegas, you're going to the first real racetrack where it's all handling, all driver skill, all on the line. Kyle Busch, the defending winner of this race, your teammate, but I'd have to imagine you'd much rather be in victory lane than Kyle Busch on Friday night. Don't spoil everything. We want you to keep your competitive secrets, but do you have a plan? Do you have a setup in mind? Do you have a game plan, if you will, for Friday night's race at Las Vegas yet?
Yeah, we Chase actually ran really well in that race last year. All 3 of the trucks, the KVM trucks in that race, were really strong. Even Nick passed Kyle, I think 2 or 3 times for the lead. They raced back and forth. Chase had to play out in that race for stage points, so it kind of put him back on the last restart, and he still drove up to 7th. So um, based off of all the notebook stuff, we're gonna go back the way it was and try to be a little more aggressive that way. Unfortunately, because of the way the first 2 races went, we do need stage points, so we'll see how it plays out. Maybe it could be something if we're running up front there with Kyle, we might go for stage points in the first stage and try to go for the win and the last stage if it came that way. So, but I know it's early in the season, but the truck schedule is so short. You got to keep that in mind too. Where Xfinity, you had 10 more races, so it was a little easier to say, all right, we're going to be more aggressive, and it's too early in the year. But the trucks, you gotta keep that in mind.
Well, speaking of that shortened schedule, you're right. Only 14 races until the playoffs, and only 23 races total on the schedule this year for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. Does that, and I think we've kind of already gotten your answer, but how much does that change the way you guys race? And also, wider question here: what are your expectations? How high do you think this team can soar when the regular season is done and when the playoffs are done and that championship trophy is being held up by somebody in Phoenix?
Um, I, of course, we're here to win. We want to win races. We want to win the championship. But I feel like for us coming together right now, we don't even have a top 10 yet. I know it's only 2 races, but still, I feel like we need to get stage points, get a couple top 10s and top 5s. And if you put yourself in that position, the points will come and the wins will come. So usually that summer stretch in any series kind of tells you how you're going to be for the playoffs. So we just need to get our feet under us, which I feel like this is going to be the first real race again to do that, because he runs well there, because this equipment's good on those tracks.
It's going to be entertaining. I believe 9 p.m. Eastern, the start time. So I know it's later there, but it's going to be a late night for everybody else. Going to be a late night for everybody normally based in Charlotte. But I think if you're in Victory Lane, you won't mind how late that it'll be. So hope you guys have a good race. Good luck this weekend in Las Vegas and for the rest of the season. And thank you a lot for joining the show today.
No problem. Thank you.